General Hospital spoilers tease that Willow has set off for Germany with a heavy heart, carrying all her hopes, doubts, and a stack of paperwork filled with legal decisions that have yet to dry, the guardianship papers she can't stop thinking about ever since signing them, thoughtlessly and under pressure. She didn't come to beg, didn't come to argue, but came to find a balance she's lost, a voice in her own life, Michael's life, and most importantly, in the lives of their children, Wiley and Amelia. But as soon as she arrives at the Baden-Baden clinic, where Michael is being treated and recuperating, the cold spring breeze in Germany is not as chilling as the rejection she receives at the reception desk. Michael will not see her. Not today, and maybe never. No heads up, no message. Just an explanation from the hospital staff that Michael is not available for visitors at this time. A polite-sounding statement, but to Willow, it is a knife that cuts through the last fragile thread she was clinging to. She had flown halfway around the world just to face the man who was once her husband. The only shoulder she ever leaned on during life and death moments, the father of 2 children she loved more than her own life. And now, Michael had chosen silence. Closed the door on her presence as if her very existence was something he didn't want to acknowledge. Willow was stunned, not by the insult, but because the silent rejection was far more brutal than any outright refusal. A storm began to form within her, not just anger or disappointment, but an eruption of feeling abandoned. Erased from the life of someone she once thought would always keep her in mind, no matter what happened. Now, as she looks down at the stack of papers in her hand, the ones about guardianship, about Drew taking care of Wiley and Amelia if something happens to her, about her caring for Scout if something happens to Drew, it all feels hollow. There is no part of her reflected in the future of the family she once built with Michael. Willow is not weak, but Michael's silence has shattered every emotional anchor she thought she still had. And the worst part isn't not seeing him, but realizing he didn't want to see her. She starts to wonder if the deep wounds, the difficult choices of the past, from hesitating to announce her illness, to pushing Michael away during treatment, were the reason he now wanted to erase her from all future plans. If that's the case, did signing the guardianship papers without discussing them with him break the final straw? She came here to make things right. But no one wants to hear her say that anymore. That rejection also marks an inner transformation for Willow, an irreversible turning point. She is no longer just the mother trying to find her place in the family, but now, she is a woman standing at the crossroads of pain, responsibility, and awakening. If Michael no longer wants her by his side, if he's decided to move on without her hand in the process, then Willow must face another choice, either step back and disappear from the picture others are painting for her children, or rise, claim her role as a mother, as a protector, and reaffirm her existence, not with words, but with actions. She didn't fly thousands of miles just to return empty-handed and with a closed door. If this is the explosion fate has in store for her, then Willow must face it like a fire, painful but resilient. She may have lost the man who was once her safe harbor, but she won't lose her children. Won't let herself be erased from their lives because of a series of decisions made during a crisis. And if Michael no longer wants to talk, then Willow will speak for that silence, by reclaiming her role, piece by piece, with every instinct of a mother being pushed to the edge. The trip to Germany didn't bring what she had hoped for, but it opened a new path, not one of reconciliation, but one of assertion. Willow will not let herself fade into the memory of a family being reshaped without her. And when she leaves the Baden-Baden clinic, though her heart is broken, she understands, this is the time to fight, not for love, but for herself and the future of the children she bore. Jason is caught in a highly tense and complex situation when Willow unexpectedly turns to him with a proposal full of pressure, help her regain custody of Wiley and Amelia. Willow, after her failed confrontation with Michael in Germany, feels herself being pushed out of the lives of the children she gave birth to. She no longer believes Michael can make wise decisions in their current situation, and she also doesn't trust Drew, who secretly inserted his name into the guardianship paperwork, to truly become the protector her children need. So, she seeks out Jason, who had once been a steady protector for Carly, for Michael, and even for herself during their darkest days. But this time, Willow doesn't just want advice. She wants action. She wants Jason to stand with her. However, Jason is no longer someone who follows his heart blindly. He is torn between duty and obligation. For just as Willow makes her request, a more dangerous situation is quietly escalating in Los Angeles, where Sunny and Carly are still recovering from Sunny's surgery. The suspicious signs of a plot not yet extinguished, the subtle movements from the WSB's old enemies, and the sensitive intelligence Jason has recently received make it clear. Sunny and Carly are still being watched, still targeted. And if Jason is not there, an attack could happen at any moment. Jason must make a nearly impossible choice. Stay to help Willow fight for her maternal rights, or leave to save his two closest friends from a threat quietly growing within the very organization he was once drawn into. The new adjustments in Jason's life are no longer just personal. Every decision he makes now has consequences, not only for the people around him but also for the safety of the town and the families bound together by the intricate web Sunny and Carly built. Jason knows Willow needs someone to stand by her. She's been rejected by Michael, Drew is half-hearted, and Elizabeth is too exhausted to intervene. She is standing alone, and the pleading, disappointed look in her eyes makes it impossible for Jason to turn away. But he also knows that if he stays, if he puts the fight for guardianship above the safety of Sunny and Carly, worse things could happen. Because in Los Angeles, all signs point to Brennan, or someone just as ruthless, still not having stopped. Jason is not a man of emotion, but he is a man of duty. And now, that duty is weighing heavily on both shoulders, pulling him in two different directions. One side is a mother about to lose everything, begging for help. The other side are two people who've saved him countless times, now standing on the line between life and death. And in that struggle, Jason realizes the scariest thing. He no longer has time to think it through. Willow, seeing the hesitation in Jason's eyes, starts to feel as though she's being left behind once again. But she doesn't know that Jason is facing an explosion of far greater magnitude, not just in his heart, but in the very plot unfolding around him. One wrong move, and everything could collapse. If he leaves, Willow will have to fight Drew on her own, and could lose everything. But if he stays, Sunny and Carly may not survive. In the darkness of Port Charles and the bright but threatening sunlight of Los Angeles, the lives of those Jason loves are being pushed into a corner that he can no longer control like before. And as the plane carrying Jason takes off, or as he stands still and reaches for the guardianship papers from Willow, a choice will be made. And whichever direction he chooses, the story will never return to how it once was. Because what's coming is a new war, born from pain, from injustice. And from the duty of a man who is no longer a hired gun, but the last night watchman of the shattered pieces. Willow is on the brink of one of the biggest turning points in her life. A turning point that comes not from illness, not from physical survival, but from the irreparable breakdown of what she once called family. After all the efforts to overcome the disease. After the moments of fighting back to regain her life on the brink of death, Willow believed that if she survived, if she had the courage to stand up, then love and family would always be the support to keep her going. But now, when Michael returns from Germany, after days of separation that seemed enough to heal, Willow is forced to face a cruel reality. Michael no longer loves her, and worse. He no longer wants her to be a part of his life and the lives of his children. That rejection doesn't need words. It's clear in every look, in the way Michael avoids. In the way he keeps his distance even if it's just a step. Willow brought hope when she went to see him in Baden-Baden. She had thought they could talk, maybe find some sliver of common ground. Of shared memories, of the pain they had overcome together. But Michael, still a father, still a rational man, had closed the last door that had remained open to Willow. And in doing so, he had not only left her feeling alone, but lost in her own life. Willow was now on the defensive. Without Michael's love, without his protection, she had to ask herself. Was anyone really on her side? With Drew holding the guardianship papers, with Jason separated by urgent tasks involving Carly and Sunny, with Portia and Terry buried in hospital work. And Elizabeth still recovering, Willow felt as if she were fighting alone, not just for her children, but for her very existence in the world. The cost of an unconscious signature is now becoming more apparent by the hour, by the minute. She had believed Drew would only be a temporary guardian, a fallback in case the worst happened. But now, with Michael retreating from the role of husband and co-parent, and Drew quietly consolidating his legal control and influence, Willow is beginning to understand that she is being squeezed out of the lives of Wiley and Amelia, two beings she bore, loved, and thought would forever be the center of their lives. The tension is not just a broken relationship, but a full-blown identity crisis. Willow doesn't know who she is if she isn't Michael's wife. She doesn't know how people will treat her if she no longer has legal parental rights to her children. Everything she had fought for, her life, her love, her family, was being challenged all at once. Like a tidal wave pulling her out to sea with no arms to hold her back. And then, in the moment when she felt like she was falling apart, Willow began to feel something she had never let herself feel before, anger. Not sadness or heartache, but a deep, raw rage, fueled by injustice, by betrayal, by rejection. She had not just been denied love, but stripped of her role as a mother, made an outsider to a life she had once been at the center of. And it was that anger that made her rise. Willow began to change. No more begging, no more seeking approval. She began to act. She reread the guardianship papers. She sought out lawyers. She begins to document the moments. The details that prove she is not unstable, not weak, not a replaceable mother. And most of all, she decides that if she must fight, she will fight to the end, not for the love she lost, but for her own identity and the future of her children. The story is no longer about a woman broken by a failed relationship. It is about a mother pushed from the center of her life. And fighting back, not to win someone back, but to reclaim her place in the world she built with blood, tears, and faith. Willow's fight is no longer optional, it is inevitable. And from the rubble of rejection, a stronger, more indomitable version of herself is slowly being born, preparing to enter the greatest battle of her life. Drew is gradually becoming a force to be reckoned with within the Corinthos family, and this is no longer just a temporary replacement or distant support, it's a real, systematic, and strategic takeover. His official appointment as the legal guardian of Wiley and Amelia, the biological children of Michael and Willow, is not merely the result of a few legal documents signed in the heat of Willow's panic over her illness, but rather the outcome of a deep and silent adjustment in the family's power structure. Once someone operating behind the scenes, Drew is now stepping forward to become the final voice in determining the future of the next generation, a position previously held only by Sonny or Carly. This shift not only shocks Willow but also sends waves of concern through Jason and Michael. Jason, who always watches every move with the instincts of a loyal warrior, realizes that Drew is no longer acting as a friend or a supporter, but is wielding a form of power similar to that of a legitimate heir to the Corinthos empire. With Carly no longer in Port Charles, Sonny in danger in Los Angeles, and Michael drowning in unresolved emotional pain, Drew has filled the void with calmness and reasoning. But Jason knows, beneath that rational exterior is a man trying to rebuild himself, possibly sacrificing everything to gain the power he was once stripped of. Michael, though not easily shaken, is starting to sense that he is being gradually pushed out of the center of decisions regarding his own family. The coldness between him and Willow has torn apart a significant part of the life that had seemed stable after so many storms. He left Port Charles trying to avoid reality, and when he returned, everything had changed. Willow is no longer the woman he feels connected to. The distance, the irreparable misunderstandings, and the return of Sasha, a woman who had brought him both pain and forgiveness, are causing Michael's feelings to drift completely off course. Willow still loves him, still clings to the chance of maintaining her role as his wife and mother, but Michael no longer has enough trust to return to her. He no longer sees a future with Willow. And that, though unspoken, is breaking apart whatever remains between them. And then, in the midst of all this chaos, Sasha enters like an old, unhealed wound that still smolders. Sasha, with her experienced eyes, her past mistakes, her falls before the media, the pressure, the losses, has now become someone Michael can look to and see himself. There are no expectations. No accusations, no questions about the future, only the present, and that is what Sasha offers him. And Michael, in his most vulnerable moments, begins to let those feelings exist, grow, and slip into the cracks of his soul like a much-needed rain after a drought. However, this new relationship only fuels the fire that has been quietly burning inside Willow. She's not only losing Michael but is slowly losing her rights as a mother. As Drew solidifies his guardianship, Jason is torn between loyalty and doubt. And Michael steps away to begin a new journey with Sasha. Willow finds herself being pushed out entirely, not by one person, but by a system. She feels like a ghost. Silently living in a family where she was once the center, but now is just a name at the bottom of the list of those with authority. Jason, meanwhile, cannot remain on the sidelines any longer. He sees the instability in how Drew is running things. He also sees the danger in Michael becoming too deeply involved with Sasha and letting go of his responsibilities. And the scariest thing is, if neither Michael nor Willow is strong enough to reclaim guardianship, Drew, alone, will control the entire legacy that Carly, Sunny, and Jason himself sacrificed so much to build. That is not something Jason can allow to happen. And so, a new explosion begins to form, not from gunshots, but from legal decisions, emotional actions, and shifting alliances. Jason knows he will have to act, perhaps with Michael, if he wakes up, or alone, but he also knows, this time, the adversary is not a drug lord, not a hidden assassin. It is an old brother, Drew, who now wears the cloak of reason but hides behind it a strategic resurrection of his own identity. Meanwhile, Willow, once a desperate mother, is transforming into a quiet warrior, no longer crying, but starting to study the law, take notes, meet with lawyers, and slowly prepare for a battle to reclaim what should never have been taken. And when the confrontation occurs, it won't just be a custody battle or a love story falling apart. It will be a fight to reclaim a position, a fight for honor, and a fight for the truth about a family that was once the pillar of Port Charles. And this time, each person will have their own move, but only one will keep it all. Willow is falling into the deepest abyss of her life, a place where every support she has ever held onto is crumbling unmercifully. She has fought against death with extraordinary strength, has overcome days of struggling between life and death, has held on to every breath just to have a chance to return to her family, to her children, to the love that she once believed was unbreakable. But ironically, as her body gradually recovers, her life begins to fall apart. Michael, the man she once believed would always be her ally, her safest home, has turned his back. He is no longer the man who held her in the hospital every time she had chemotherapy, no longer the steadfast father beside the children they created together, but now only a distant, cold shadow, closing all doors of connection. He doesn't say it, but his eyes betray everything. He has let go. And worse, he has chosen to move on, without her. He turned to Sasha, and in their eyes, Willow couldn't help but see a new beginning, with no place for the past. Meanwhile, Drew, who had seemed like a friend, a temporary solution, had become the legal guardian of Wiley and Amelia. Signed by Willow in the weakest moment of her life. Now, she had lost not only her husband, her love, but also her right to be a mother. From a woman who had been on the brink of death to fight for her children's lives, she was being pushed out of their lives, without sound, without warning, with no one on her side. And in that very moment, as Jason retreated to face the dangers of Carly and Sunny, as Michael chose to forget her, as Port Charles turned its cold shoulder to her like an unstable woman, Willow became a silent, lonely, and completely abandoned figure. But in that deep darkness, a new fire began to rise. No more innocence or forgiveness. No more anger. No more resistance. And darkness. Willow had lost everything, and so she had nothing left to lose. She was no longer afraid. She was no longer bound by expectations, by names, by broken hearts. She was entering the most dangerous stage of a person's life, the stage where they were no longer ruled by the fear of failure. The darkness she had avoided. The darkness she had tried to ignore as she watched the power struggles around her, was now the only refuge she had left. And in that darkness, Willow was no longer weak. Willow was stronger than ever. She didn't need anyone to save her anymore. She didn't need Michael to come back. She didn't need Jason to protect her. She didn't need Drew's apologies or sympathy from those who thought she was too weak to stand on her own. She would fight, and she wouldn't play by any of the old rules that had held her back. She wouldn't cry for Michael. She won't beg Drew. She'll act, quietly, coldly, and strategically. Because if they can take her out of their lives so easily, she can step back in unstoppable. Willow is changing. No longer the woman who forgave mistakes, who suffered in silence, who believed in unconditional love. Now she's a woman who's been through hell, betrayed by those she loved. And born again, not into the light, but into fire and darkness. Port Charles has never seen a Willow like this. And by the time they realize it, it may be too late. Because the woman who was once cast aside has become a silent threat, an unpredictable storm, and this time, she's not fighting to rewrite the past. She's fighting to rewrite the future. Alone. Strong. And relentless.